share screen going here. This will be epic if I can get this to work. All right, let me go into here. All right, I think, no, snowball. Okay, so that's there. I think this should work here. So we should see, if you go into the meeting, I'm just trying to see if I can do a screen share this way for us to see if we can actually see what my screen is seeing. So if you click on Zoom and it may ask you to download, click on that, it'll bring it to it. So there should be a little, if it's not opening, click on the text underneath. Click on that .exe and it should bring you to, yeah, click on fire that there. See what this does. See if it's even worth it. I don't know. And it's just going around in circles. Yeah, you can just hit join. So you don't even need to sign in or anything like that. You should be able to just log in from the computer. And oh, is that my computer? What is it saying? Recording in progress or something like that? Oh, cool. Who cares? All right. Cool. We can actually sort of see what my computer is doing. It's a total backwards way of doing this. There's an app that we have on our machine that lets us do that. Now you do. Okay. So this is cool. I can show you stuff and it's already recording, which is very, very, very good. We'll see how this goes. If the audio sounds like garbage, I might have to make another recording later on, but we will get going. Inside of our weekly content for week 2, the only thing I've placed in there for right now is our assignment. And our assignment is pretty interesting. And by that, maybe it's not. We're going to be masking by using a clipping mask, and we're going to clip out New York. So that way it has the skyline behind it. We'll offset that and add some color, and we'll use an effect on that. You've seen this be applied, maybe better probably by some professionals for when you have postcards that are made, or whenever you have introductions to movies or something like that, you might see something like this where you have the name of the city that is showing up from the background. You'll notice that I have an exercise folder. And inside of this exercise folder is a dog, New York City, and an angry chicken. So these are what we're going to be using to create this assignment. Wow, it's so much better. Is that not working for you? Let's see. Go to content. Zoom. Okay. All right. I think it's gonna. Yeah, double click on that. And then let that initialize. I think it'll go. Let me know if it doesn't. If not, the screen is right here. So now, with all that going on, and yeah, launch meetings, and then hit Zoom meetings. Oh, is that one? All right, cool. All right, cool. This is a workaround, but it works. So we might use Zoom to see stuff, and it doesn't look like it's like fragging out the image at all for you guys, which is really nice. Maybe we're causing a network jam somewhere else, but we're working. We're gonna make this image. You'll also notice I have very rough, like what we have to do step by step here. I'm gonna show you how to do that, but in case you forget your way, this is just here for you that. Then we're gonna make a dog run away from a chicken. And we made the dog way smaller than the chicken. So we're gonna do some P shopping here to make a fake image. And so this one is a picture of a dog that has been reversed. And we've added the dog, so he's actually looking like he's in the grass. And we've added some rim light to match some of the yellow light that's going on in the background of our scene. So that's what we're gonna do for our second one. The last one is your user choice. You can do whatever you want. And so you'll be basically taking an image and you'll be compositing a background, a foreground, and putting text in there, just like the ones that we have added for these other ones. So this first one, New York. Let's figure out how to get that going. We got ourselves our exercise folder. I'm going to download these. And by that, I mean, I'd like to download them. So let me click on the little download icon. There we go. There and there. And other menus are popping up for no reason. Okay, so I need to put this somewhere. For right now, since I didn't bring my thumb drive, I'm going to pretend that's my thumb drive. We're going to go to the digital apps. We're going to go to week 2. I'm going to drag all these into there. Now, when I do that, you'll notice when I try to do that, it goes away. That's super annoying. Let's just kind of minimize this, or not minimize, but we're going to make that so it pops out. We'll drag these in here. All righty. So now that I have these images in here, we can go into Photoshop. We're going to get this out of here because we don't need it. I don't need to save it. Okay. I need to bring these in. So what I'm going to just do is take New York and drag it into here. That's going to open that up into Photoshop. And if it doesn't, it's because Photoshop wants to call me a liar. There we go. Okay. So I have this thing. If you don't know where that is, it's New York City. So what we're going to do with this is add New York to it. To do that, let's first look at where we are. If we look at this, the photographer here did a pretty good job in centering this image, but let's just double check on that. If I go to my view and I go to rulers, your rulers are actually telling you the amount of pixels that are here. So you can actually measure this out. And you actually see I have a guide that came out by me left clicking and dragging this icon. So I left click and drag. You'll notice it gets snagged somewhere. That's because that's the dead center of our composition. That's a very helpful tool to have as an artist. We know where we can start to plan our objects and all that stuff. So that's pretty close to the dead center. I'm not going to change where that is. I'm going to leave that alone. So what I'm going to do now is go and make text. And so I clicked on this little tool. And you notice it's not doing anything yet. It's actually thinking for some reason. There we go. I have my text tool. And by default, the horizontal text tool is what we use. And so if I tap anywhere on my screen, you'll say it says something very, 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 very tiny. Lorem ipsum. It's not summoning a demon or anything like that. It's just some jargon that generally happens. So we have some Latin going on in here to fill that in so we can see something. It's our default text that's added. I don't want that. I deleted it. And you'll notice I still had this little tiny little dot right here. That's telling me that's where it's going to start. Now, that little tiny dot is because I'm at 12 points. So 12 points is like tiny for this image. So I'm going to actually go, let's go like 300. So I'm at 300. I'm going to type in new, and then I'm going to just stop, and I'm going to look at what I have here. You'll notice over here, now it says new. So Photoshop was actually nice this time. And instead of it just giving us new layer or layer 1, 2, 3, and 4, this actually labels it based on the text that we are currently working on. So now that I know that I have the text that I'm currently working on, which is new, if I need to go back and change that, I can easily do that just by double clicking. And so when I double click, it brings me back to my text tool and I can change more stuff in that. The first thing I want to change is this font. It's not great. I want to change that to a font that may be a little bit more enjoyable to look at. And I want it to feel structured. Like I want it to have like a sense of balance, and I want it to have like a square look to it. And the reason why I'm saying that is because my composition is of skyscrapers. And so with skyscrapers, we're thinking psychologically, how do we mirror that aspect with our text? If I'm going to use something like this, that's not very new. That would feel more like if we're showing when the Dutch settlers showed up to Manhattan and it didn't have skyscrapers. This looks very much not good for what we're trying to come across with it. So I'm just going through here and trying to find something that would be kind of bold and square for text. And in here, it doesn't have to be the same one that you guys use. This is up to you, but I want you to be thinking about why we choose certain things. All right, I'm going to try this one, Franklin Gothic Heavy. And you'll notice that Franklin Gothic Heavy is what I have, and I have it set to regular. If I wanted to be a little spicy with it, I can change it to italic. I'm going to keep it like this, though. If I wanted to change the kerning and the leading on my text, you'll notice that there's spaces here that don't look very nice. This happens, and I want you to be aware of this when you're working with text, that even though you made something and the computer made this for you, it probably made it in the most default way to spit out text for you. It wasn't designed by a human being. We have to adjust the way the text lays out in our composition. So you notice I got this massive gap between NE, and then I got this little tiny gap between E and W. That's not good. Let's try to clean this up. So you notice if I left click and drag between these, I can select it. And if I go over into, that's weird, the little menu. I have a pop-up that shows up that you guys can't see, and I have to wait for it to go away so I can actually work again. There we go. Where's my text tool? All right, Windows. Paragraph and character. Okay. So character is what I was looking for. Usually there is a little icon up here that will show that. It's not showing right now. So if we can't find it inside of this top menu here, what I can do is go to Windows and then look for character for the drop down. And that's what window and then character is currently showing. So if I turn that off, it's gone. Window, character. Okay. I want to adjust this thing. And this thing is the tracking. And tracking is like across an entire sentence or a line of words. I just want just the kerning. So just a little bit of the like the individual pieces. So I have these selected right now. I'm going to go negative. Oh boy. You'll notice I'll have to adjust these too. That's okay. I might add a couple pluses to that. Have both of them selected, add some more to that. There we go. And so now I have a little bit of better spaces between this text. This is where people get paid the big money in graphic design and all that fun stuff, because they knew, oh, that little bit of space, let's fix that. And all of a sudden it went from making that, you know, that sort of okay piece of artwork look super, super clean, crisp, and well designed. I'm not a graphic designer. I am more illustrator and a sculptor and 3D artist and a painter. This thing is the clean art. My wife does the clean art. She's a graphic designer. I'm the messy type of art. So it's good to know how to do these things and try to be as good as these as possible. But I will tell you, for my skill sets and the way my brain is wired, this is probably my least of things I'm able to do. My brain doesn't work that way. So for you graphic designers out there, you may be freaking out like there's like a couple more pixels there that could have went away. Well, that's okay. So I made new. Have you ever looked at a word and when you put it in something, it's like, is that how people spell new? It just looks all of a sudden like it's not the word because it's out of the context of being written down. As graphic designers, this is something you have to be aware of. When we look at the word new, that doesn't look like that's proper. It's because it's all capital. So we just need to be aware of, like, psychologically, we're so used to visually seeing things and digesting information that when we take that out and have that individually on its own, it all of a sudden feels naked. It feels kind of like it's just not where it's supposed to be. So let's give it a friend. I have new. I'm going to duplicate this layer. To do that, I'm going to right click. I'm going to hit duplicate layer. And I want this new copy. Cool. That'll be fine. But I'm going to actually call that York and hit OK. Now, wait a minute. New is new, but York is new. Well, that's because you can change the name of your layer, but it's not going to change the name of the text. We actually have to go into here. So I'm going to double click. I'm going to type YORK. And holy cow, is that illegible? Like, that's just not going to work. It will once we adjust it, but right now it's on top of the other one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my move tool. So again, that's V. We talked about this last class, move tool. When we look at the video, this person moved that turtle. Cool. So the move tool, I have that. I don't want to do that though, because I'm not a robot and I don't think I'm going to be able to make that stay across that line when I'm dragging. So there's a better way to be able to do this. If I left click, hold down shift and drag, it's gonna keep it aligned. It's gonna keep it nice and clean. So that's the way that we can make sure that we're staying either on a horizontal or a vertical axis when we're working. So now I have New and York. York actually doesn't look too bad this time when it was created. The way that the tracking is currently being set up, good. It's like some little spots on some of these spots I can clean up, but I'm actually pretty happy with the design or of the spacing of these letters. What I'm trying to find out now, and what I'm going to do is just left click and drag this guide off. I want to make sure that the spaces between these two pieces of text look visually interesting. So I have my move tool currently active. If I move with my arrow keys, so I'm using my arrow key, I'm moving it closer to the, I don't know if it's a lightning rod or spire or whatever King Kong wants to climb, which technically he didn't climb this one, it was the Chrysler building. Nerd fact. So I'm going to move this a little bit closer to that one and just explore by backing up away from my monitor, because this is another thing we don't really think about. What if we're making this and it's going on the side of a bus? That's huge. You're sitting there looking at it like this, like, oh, it looks good. And then you back up and you're like, holy cow, the spacing's garbage. And that's because we need to be aware of how this thing is being viewed from all sorts of different perspectives and angles and all sorts of fun stuff like that. I'm pretty okay with where we're at this point, but maybe I want to just kind of push that down a little bit more. So if I want to push both of these down, if I select this top one, hold down shift and left click, and I'm going to just arrow key down. It's not too bad. So New York, that's words, good. I now want to be able to do something with my background to make my background fill with my words. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to double click on my text again for new. Click on my color. And I'm going to make it like a light blue. Now this light blue has a hex code or whatever you want to call this down here. And it's the 6-digit thing that's basically representing where the color is. If you have to work at a printing press or if you're working with other people, you're going to have to match colors. It's very important. If you're working for a sports team and they're like, hey, that's not cardinal red. We use cardinal red. That's like blood orange. You're fired. We don't want that to happen. It's very important that if you're given a color and you have to work with it, stay with it. You don't need to use this color. I'm just going to use this and I'm showing you this as an example. This is an easy way to copy and paste that. You'll also see there's other ways to do that with hue, saturation, the black level. We have RGB, which stands for red, green, and blue. CMYK for print. All of these are different ways of being able to get that color represented digitally. Right now we're in RGB, which is red, green, blue. That is what the screens use. If we're going to be working for printing, that's CMYK. And we'll talk about that a little bit later because I have a plan for our second project. You guys have to design a logo. And I'm in the process of getting, anyone work with Shrinky Dinks as a kid? No? Okay. It sounds weird. It's a piece of plastic that you can draw on and you put it in the oven and they shrink really small. What's cool nowadays is you can take those things, put them through the printer, and then shrink them down. And then you have really, really cool small icons or plastic pieces that then can be made into your own custom buttons. So we're going to be making a custom button that we'll be actually printing and having for our backpack, whatever the hell we're doing. So we'll be putting resin on top to put a nice clear coat on it, and it will come out super, super nice for this next project that we'll be doing. So that will have to be more of a CMYK rather than the RGB. And we'll be talking about all the fun that has to happen to match those up. So I have this number here. Back to this thing. If I copy this and I go into this next one, I can actually paste that number. But you know what? You need to copy it first. Let me go back into there. Control C, hit OK, double click, go into color here, paste, and OK. All right. If I was not able to do that, if I was not able to sample for whatever reason, if I forgot how to copy and paste, I could also sample by clicking my little eyedropper. Anytime that you're outside of the area of your color picker, if you go outside of that, you can sample colors as well. I'm not going to do that because this worked. Cool. Let's add some flair to this, some pizzazz. I'm going to go ahead and grab this new. I'm going to press FX. I'm going to use bevel and emboss. Now this thing's gonna allow for me to make the worst looking shadow new image ever. But what I'm gonna be able to do with this is I'm gonna use inner bevel, change that to chisel hard, and then change my depth. And change my size. I basically just want a little shadow. It's almost like this layer's cut into the skyline. So I've added this, and I can adjust this. I can add the opacity of my shadow to make it a little bit darker, or I can make it lighter. So what this is going to do for me is just a little bit of extra pop to this to offset that from my background. And you can spend quite a bit of time in these settings here. You also have the ability to modify the angles of your lighting, and we have our highlights that we can change. For this, I'm okay with where that is. I'm just going to leave this alone at around here, and I'm going to hit OK. Now that took me like 30 seconds to make that effect. That's a lot of time. And honestly, that is in the production world. So we don't want to have to redo all of that. If I go and right click over effects, and I go to the copy layer style, I'm going to go to right here. I'm going to paste layer style, which somewhere in here, maybe it's not. Let's see. Am I losing my, there it is. It just is lower than it's supposed to be. There we go. All right. And it pasted that into this other layer. I don't have to worry about working that up. That actually works really well for the New York layer. So that's good. Okay. So now that I have that, I have both these here. I want to do one more thing. I'm going to take this background and duplicate it. So I have this one. I'm going to bring that above this other layer. Oh, no. It disappeared. The reason why it disappeared, it's you have this giant image on top of all these other layers. However, if I want to work with this thing, I can do something really cool with it. I can actually hold down the Alt key. You'll notice it makes this thing. A little piece of paper with a down arrow. That means clipping mask. So if I click on it, all of a sudden this shows up again. And I can actually see through that. Now, if I change this, of course I'm on, yeah, there it is. So this one, I can see through it. The only thing is, it's not just see-through. It's actually, if I use my move tool, it's actually the layer. So I'm going to hide these other ones so you can see what I'm talking about. This is now basically as a clipping mask saying, hey, you have a picture. You want to put that picture over text or whatever else you're trying to use. It can just be a solid object. If you click that by holding down on the Alt key in between both of them, it'll put that on top of that. So it now gives our text a little bit more texture. And so I did that and I offset it just because I didn't want this to necessarily be 100% sitting on top of the cloud so it blends in too much. So by offsetting it, it kind of blends that in a little differently. And I can change the opacity on this as well. So maybe it's like that. So now I have clouds and I've changed the opacity of this background layer. So that way it kind of just, it's there, it blends in, it's kind of serene when you're looking at it, but it's not over the top. It's kind of hinting at happiness, happy times in New York. Sometime I'll tell you about the first day I worked in New York City and I got on the subway and I thought it was awesome because I had the whole train car by myself and I sat down and it was very warm and then I smelled pee, and then I had to walk for a half a mile to my apartment in the cold in January, and how that tends to freeze things quickly. So that was a fun experience in the Big Apple when you learn about trains the hard way and why no one's in that train car, and maybe you shouldn't have been either. So, full of wisdom like that. All right, so we have this. I'm moving this thing around. That's looking pretty interesting. Just playing around with this. Now, don't ever feel when you make stuff that you have to stick with your original setting on something. So especially if I look at my bevel and emboss, right now I have that bevel and emboss. It kind of feels weak now that I have the rest of this in here. So now I can start to kind of refine. So I'm on York right there. There we go. The depth of my bevel, the size of that, maybe just to make that even smaller there. And then maybe I want to soften some of those edges a little bit more. And now again, I can take this, copy layer style, and paste layer style, which for whatever reason is underneath all of that. Okay, so this is what we're gonna be doing for our first exercise for this. Now, if we look at what did I say for the write-up? Save your PSD file as last name _ New York. Okay, I could do that. So file, save as, and we can save it to our cloud first if we need to. That's just a fun thing I was working on. That's a personal project. So I'm going to save this as New York. And I'll save. So now that I have that one, it's good. I have my first exercise ready to go. That will go into my submissions. My next thing I have to do, I'm going to make a dog. It's a tiny dog, but I'm going to make it super tiny. That way, this chicken can chase it. So to do that, I need to bring in my chicken and my dog into my scene. So to do that, I'm going to go inside of Photoshop. I can leave this one open. I'll just go to File, Open. Let me grab this masking exercise, chicken. And for whatever reason, oh no, this is the document. We'll let that open. Okay, this is the final one. Let's go into Open. I'm going to go to on my computer, and I have it on my desktop under Thumb, and right here, chicken. Open. No dog. Okay. From here, I need to set up the scene. There's not a lot of what I need to do. The first thing I really need to do is I want to make it so this isn't just one image. It's one background image. If I'm going to stick that little hot dog in there, I need to make sure that there's a foreground and a background layer, because we're going to sandwich that hot dog in between the two buns of the foreground and the background layers. Get me? All right. You ready? Easy. Duplicate your layer. Halfway there. Now.
So what you're doing again? Why do you duplicate?
Because we're going to make this whole section be above. So just like this one here, the one I already have, this is like any good chef. They already have one in the oven that they pull out. It's all cooked. So this one right here, I have this foreground layer. That's just this. All it is this grass that I put a mask on. Then I have the doggo. And then I have the background. So I'm sandwiching the little hot dog in between these two layers. And then I can make this beautiful image that would sell millions, I know. So if I go to here, I have these two layers. This one right here is what I'm going to use to make a mask. So if I click this little button right here, that says Add Layered Mask. This is one of the tools I use like all the time in Photoshop when I'm working. When I make a mask, it does nothing. It did nothing for me. The only thing it did is it made that white rectangle right next to it, and it made that chain in between the two, meaning that it is linked. So if we look, we have this thing linked to that thing. That means if I were to move around my image, this thing should come with it. If I turn that off, my mask won't be moving with it. So that's all really you need to worry about when we see that part. We'll work more with these later. We could, yeah. We're gonna actually flip the dog, actually. So with this thing right here, it is set to white, which means I can see everything. In Photoshop, it is either black or white for these layer masks. And white means that everything is visible. So a layer mask is going to be something that will hide things. So if I use this thing, but then I go over to here and I use a gradient tool, I can make something show up and then disappear using gray. And I'll show that before I even draw out on this. I'm going to hide these. I'm going to click on this gradient tool, and you notice by default, I have this black and white gradient. If I just left click and drag, mind blowing how that worked, right? So I'm basically able to apply a gradient between 2 colors, 3 colors. I can make it so it is going to be a radial gradient, or one of these fancy ones, or a bar. Lots of different gradients I can work with. For this one that we're going to work on right now, we're just going to use black and white. We can change that in here as well. So we can actually change the settings of this, which we'll get more into later on in this class. We're just going to use the default of black to white and hit OK. So I'm going to get rid of this layer so we can see how I'm going to apply that in here. I have grass in the foreground, but I also have the chickens in the foreground. I'm going to do something where I want the chickens to disappear for this front layer. So to do that, I'm going to use my gradient tool, and I'm going to make sure I'm not on my layer, because if I do that, I'm actually drawing over that layer. So there is a gradient right there, right?
So how do you make it pop up?
Just left click and drag. And you'll notice right there, ghost chickens, because my gradient is defined by how long the drag is on my computer. So if I drag a little bit, you'll see a very, very small transition, and very dark and very, the black and white is very pronounced. If I drag all the way across, you'll notice that gradient is going across my entire document. So depending on how you drag is going to give you a different looking gradient. Cool thing, if you hold down Shift and left click to drag, that will go up and down or left and right. It will make sure it's staying aligned. So that is a good thing. So this, we can use a gradient just for pictures. I'm going to use the gradient for something else this time, just by going into my layer mask. So that's, or my layer mask right here. I'm going to click and drag up. And you'll notice I've got like ghost feet of chickens. If I go lower on that, you'll notice it gives me that. Now, why would I use a gradient instead of just cutting this out? What advantage would a gradient give me? It saves me time. What else is it doing? Yes. So instead, I could do something like this. If I were to just like chop, 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 and of course, didn't want to do that very fast. There we go. I'm going to go around here. If I use this thing and I'm going to just go black on that, you can see I've got a really crisp edge. So I'm not really fading anything back. This little trick allows for me with the gradient tool to have that transition between those 2 layers that's very subtle and very easily controlled. So if you notice that the wrong part disappears, you made the grass disappear, just hit Control-Z to go back, left click and drag.
But you only use gradient for big things, right? Because
Well, yes. Yeah, it's a good question. Can you do this on like more fine things, like maybe the hot dogs in the background? We couldn't do that, but we're still going to use a layer mask to get that dog out from the other piece. This is looking good. So right now, we're not going to notice any difference between these layers with this top one with a gradient applied for the mask, because it's the same picture that's showing up behind that. In comes the hot dog. So we're going to pull up the horrified dog. And this dog needs to be pulled out of this background to do any work with it. There's a couple different ways that we can do that. We are not going to gradient it. We're going to do something else. Yes. Yes. I'm going to use an eraser for the background. Now I want you to see there's actually a couple different ways to do this. If I can get the toolbar to show this. Okay. If I have this selected and I click on this thing, this is called a quick mask. And if I use my brush tool and I start to paint, what this is doing is painting everything red. For right now, we don't really need to do this because the object that we're going to be trying to cut out is pretty well separated from the background. So there's actually a tool that we can use to do this. However, sometimes we do have to spend that time and energy to mask out an area. That way we can select it out. So if we look at what I'm doing here, I'm just gonna just really quick around the doggo's head. And becomes more and more demonic, the more red is applied to this thing. Okay, so I have this thing. If I were to click off of this, it made a selection basically. Now, this is this thing right down here. This is quick select tool. We're not going to need to use that for today. I want you to be aware of this though, because for your picture that you're going to make, you might want to use this. So if I click on that again, I can get into that mask and then change it. So I can toggle this on and off to see what was currently being selected. That's kind of cool. I can also double click on that and I can tell it either to mask. The color indicates the masked areas or the selected areas. If I change that to selected, it kind of makes more sense. I like to think about it this way because when I'm painting, that's the part that I want to select. So if I turn that off and on again, you'll see, there we go. So I'm kind of masking out that spot. So I'm going to double click again and bring that back to here. Don't worry if this is a lot because we're going to just look at this really quick. All right, let's say I am painting and I'm adding more to this thing, or I want to clean it up. If I switch the colors here to white and I use the open bracket key, which is underneath your backspace, and I start to paint around here, I can clean up that mask. Or I can clean up that selection.
You're going to take away the red paint?
Yep. So if I do that and I look at what my selection did, you'll notice it got smaller around that area. Which is cool because I can actually go into here now and right click, or actually I'm just going to click on this. So I have this selected. I'm going to press that button. And now Ghost Dog, it's horrifying. So I masked out the head by clicking this icon, which is our layer mask. And by doing that, I had a selection. So that's something to realize. When you have something selected, I'm going to delete that. Somebody just select something this time. Marquee selection on here, press that mask. It's going to mask out whatever it is that's currently selected. I could do that. Or check this button out. It's like a magician. It knows how to grab things. Oh yeah. This one, some other ones it might not. Back in my day, the magic wand tool was the cool thing all the kids in high school were talking about. We had these really cool colored Apple machines. They were really cool. Nowadays, you guys have this tool available to you. And watch this. Just like this, object selection tool.
And like, it'll click on the object and it'll get fighting.
Yep.
You get the whole dog?
Only grapefruits, actually. No, it'll do anything, any object that you're selecting. So watch this. Left click and drag. Let it think for a while. Oh, why don't you just go, hey, did you crash too? I hope you crashed. Do it, do it. I dare you, Photoshop.
Oh, no.
Oh,
I learned so much.
that, you know what? No, it was a program error. Sometimes Photoshop has problems with cute dogs. It just can't think. It can't process anything. Let's just try to do that one more time. The cute dogs, again, it just doesn't want to do it. On any other computer, this works so easily. Okay, let's see. Let's give it time because it's still processing the cuteness, I think. It's still thinking. Someday it won't be doing that. Okay. I'm gonna duplicate this layer. Let's see if we can just, you know what?
Not even small things.
I wonder. I'm gonna go in here and then start, no, I killed a lot of stuff. There's not a lot of stuff open. Weird. It should just, grab it. If it doesn't do that, we can use this thing.
It was before.
Oh, it did it at home perfectly all yesterday. This tool right here does the same thing, except you have to paint it like a total schmuck. You have to like sit there and move your mouse around. Although I just did this in 2 seconds, so not that big of a deal. However, this is a cool thing because I had a whole thing where if you have a terrible magician at your birthday party, you just drag across that and you make them disappear. But now it's okay. We'll do this. Let's take this guy. Watch this. I have him here. Bam. He is now outside of the grass. We have put him in another element. Yes. So I'm going to save this before I do anything else because I have this document. It's called dog. I'm going to file, save as, save it on my computer. It's in my area here, and we'll just call this Pico_dog. Save it. Hit OK. Okay. Let's go back to the chickens. So we're back in the chickens.
You're about to open the development file?
Yes. I'm going to go and place linked. So how we work with images is very important in Photoshop. I can copy and paste, or when we started our skyscraper scene, I just dragged an image right into there and it worked. However, let's say that whatever you're working on, there's somebody else next to you in your art department who might be working on another part of that same image at the same time, which sounds crazy, but it could be happening. So you might not want to work directly on their piece because you might override that. Instead, we can do something called place linked. What that means is you're placing a live document. So you're going to be placing the Photoshop document into there. So if I do that, and it's better if you just see this. There's the dog, not this dog, this dog. Place it. He's way too tiny. I don't know why he showed up that small. There he is. And we'll pop him like right here, hit enter. Now, this is a linked document, meaning that if I'm in here and I wanted to do something crazy like color overlay and do that as. So if I save this and I go back to the chicken thing, it's now updated. So that allows for your pipeline to be able to go back and forth. This is super, super important. Like, especially if you're working, like, let's say that you're working on a poster for like the new Marvel movie or something. You might not have the finished photo of your actor, but you have to start laying out your elements of the composition. You have to lay out your text and experiment with that. This just allows you to reference that in. And then as soon as that actor's picture is done, maybe they have to clean it up. They had a zit on their face that had to go away. That live document will be updated, and all of a sudden you have the newest version in there. Now, obviously, I don't want a green dog, so I'm going to go in here, turn off effects, file, save, and go back to this. Cool.
This is what most news sources do. News outlets do.
Oh, yeah. So, dog is here. You'll notice that in the image of this dog, for the icon for that layer, there's a little chain link again. That means that it's linked. That means this is a living document that's inside of here right now. I'm going to drag dog down. He's in the grass now.
Is that the one was the first one?
So this is the same, and now he's in the grass.
How do you move to the grass?
Drag him down.
Oh, so you drag him up and he was up at first, right?
So he was up top when you first import. They usually put him on the top layer. Bring him down. So now he's underneath this part, and then put your other layer. Now let's analyze this scene before we're done. Which direction is the light coming from on the chicken?
What?
Left side light is coming from over here. Which direction is the light coming from the dog?
Can't tell, right?
Right. This is darker over here than it is over there. Let's fix that. I'm going to take this dog, go to edit, transform, and I'm just going to flip the horizontal. And now, oh, okay, cool. It almost looks like he's going to be there. Although There's some beautiful light going on. You can see that warm sunshine on that farm going on. It's pretty cool. He doesn't have that. He's kind of got a little bit more of a blue hue to him. Let's just change that a little bit by adding, I'm just going to put a light across this. Go to effects. And we're going to cheat. Although this says inner shadow, we're going to make it a light, like a rim light. Remember, anything in Photoshop, although it says it's used for this, I guarantee you there's like 900 other reasons why that exists. So this one's awesome. I'm going to change multiply to overlay. The difference between those, multiply, is it's kind of burning in. It's making things darker. Overlay will do the opposite of that. It'll actually brighten up a scene. So if I do overlay and I change this to a orange, you can already see it there. And you can already tell, like, oh man, it's starting to happen. You're doing it, Peter. No one watched Hook, I guess. It's okay. You guys should watch Hook. It's a good movie. It involves Peter Pan when he grows up.
Robin Williams.
Yeah. It's a really good, really good movie. Mm-hmm. All right. Cool. I've kind of got a little bit of fake lighting now on that doggo, and it almost matches with what's going on here. Let's compare and contrast what that did. Just a little bit of spill light on the side just helped to, you know, obviously it's not 100%, but it's pretty close to make this almost feel believable. Like this, I would have to look twice to see if this is a fake thing. So now you two also have the power. You also have the power to fake images of chickens and dogs. One thing I don't like about this composition though, it's kind of, there's a lot of nothing down here. So instead, what if we actually took our marquee select tool and we went around like maybe here and go to image, crop. Now I'm kind of framing that action in a little bit more. Easy way to do that, just image, crop. And you notice that worked just by doing the marquee selection on that. So I'm now going to save this file, save as on my computer. And that's also chicken. So I have the chicken, the New York, and then last but not least, the only thing we have to do after this is make something your own. Make with text layer that you're going to apply that like cutout technique that I showed you guys. And literally you can follow that same process. Don't put New York and it's like a bunch of mushrooms or something there. You know, be creative on that. And how do you actually find images that you can work with? As students, these are pretty okay ones to use. I really can't believe some of the awesome pictures I was able to find on some of these. So these are open source images. You can do stuff with them. Burst.
If you post them on social media, can you get extra credit?
I don't need you to tag anything in here. That's fine. Just put them. Credit is the only credit I do. Extra is just is a figment of people's imaginations. Yes, you can do that too. Yes. So check this out. We have top free picks, and there's all sorts of stuff you can find in here. Like there's some good stuff you can use in this stuff. And it'll ask you like, just give the credit to the person if you make this to tag them on the bottom. That's all they're asking for. Not for these, because I know who made them. You didn't. So you can use either these or all of these other ones here. Nature Stock has more. So yep, right on Blackboard, inside of the write-up, I have this link of free images to grab from. This is an important exercise for us because what we're going to be doing is making a collage of a letter and a bunch of images we find for our second project. So second or third, we'll get to there. You may have noticed I changed the start of our first project. We're going to talk about that on Monday, so we won't talk about that today. I'm going to stop sharing and end this.